May Day marches and protests are underway. As demonstrators fill downtown Seattle, police are telling us they are ready.
We will have zero tolerance for acts of violence against anyone.
With a renewed call to action tonight, the Seattle police are doubling down on their promise to contain today's demonstrations. And the best view of those is from above. KIRO 7 has Chopper 7 live over downtown Seattle, showing protesters already gathered at Westlake Park right now. Now, we have team coverage of May Day in Seattle, and we begin with KIRO 7's Deborah Horn live at the Federal Building in downtown.
And Deborah, you walked alongside some of these protests. Really quite varied.
Really quite varied, Dave. And you know what's so interesting is we broke off from them so we could bring you this report, and they are now just arriving here at the federal courthouse. What a day it has been. Now, this day began with a rally in Judkins Park in central Seattle featuring lots of music and a lot of speeches. The theme is a fight for immigrants' rights. But also, of course, there were those touting a variety of issues, from the rights of the LGBTQ community to those upset about police brutality. Many people were there upset about that, including the brother of Che Taylor, who was killed by Seattle police months after he was released from prison. We'll hear from him a little bit later, but of course this is a march that is to highlight the plight of immigrants and their goal of improving their lot and their lives in this country. Much of their anger aimed squarely at the federal government. Back here live, you can see here at the federal building, I would say we guess that there are hundreds of people who are part of the march, hundreds of people who are part of the rally as well, and they are planning to have a rally here too. We, of course, are going to stay here, and we'll bring you more about this really momentous day for the immigrants' rights community at 5:30. For now, reporting live in downtown Seattle, Deborah Horn, KIRO 7 News.
All right, Deborah, we want to take you over to Westlake Park right now, where an anarchist music festival is underway.
That's right. KIRO 7's Henry Rossoff is there live. And Henry, tell us what's happening right now.
Well, just within the last half hour or so, they begin to wrap up the concert here as they gear up for more tonight. The concert actually effectively became a warning for folks shopping downtown that there's more and perhaps more aggressive protests to come later tonight. As the anarchist music began to play, and black-clad, mask-wearing protesters came out to begin an evening of protesting and possible destruction.
It hit me. It's like, oh, it's May Day.
Downtown Westlake shoppers like Silky Sukra Singh began to take notice. She says with a heavy police presence in and around the area, she feels okay being down here for now, but before any rioting starts.
I'm going to clear out in another hour or two, just taking the ferry back to Bremerton and just, be out of the town. So, because you want to be safe.
So feeling safe now, but don't want to be here later.
Not really, no. You just never know.
And the few so-called anarchists already ready for the evening did seem standoffish when we tried to get video at the concert, which is why business owners like Lisa Wojcik came in on a Sunday to close down their operations.
But I have a business down on 3rd. We're just making sure they're okay. We'll send them home early. Just get out of here before it gets wild. Hopefully not too wild.
And we are seeing a few folks around here with masks and Guy Fawkes masks in all black, so starting to form up as we move towards 6 o'clock, and that's when we're expecting more of the so-called anarchist march to really begin in earnest. Live at Westlake Center, Henry Rossoff, KIRO 7 News.
We know that you'll be watching that closely. Thanks, Henry.
KIRO 7's Gary Horker is also live at Westlake Park, where police have a very strong presence tonight. Gary, what are they saying about their plans to protect protesters and themselves?
Well, I've covered this every year for about a half a decade now, and I have to tell you, this year, there are so many different things. It's becoming tougher and tougher to predict what will happen and where. Take a look at a look right now in Westlake Park. You do have some protesters gathered here. This year, two things are different. One, Seattle police said they'll have 30% more officers on hand on every block as the protesters move through the streets. The other difference is where everything starts. The last few years, they've started and ended the night on Capitol Hill, and that's where a lot of the vandalism happened. You see, they're trying to block our shot right now. including they've shattered the windows of our live trucks on Capitol Hill. This year, it's also a Sunday, it's warm, so the crowd should be considerably bigger. Police say they're ready for anything. They don't want to repeat of 4 years ago. Crowd management is how this will start. It has almost ended every year with a little bit of riot control. So we'll stick with you live and let you know as it happens all the way to the end, and be live tonight at 11. For now, reporting live at Westlake Park, I'm Gary Horker, Cairo 7 News.
All right, variety of protests out there right now. We're talking immigration protests and anarchists protesting as well. Cairo 7's Joanna Smold is live for us in Chopper 7. High above it all, Joanna, what are you seeing?
Well, we've been following these protesters since about 3 o'clock when they started around the Judkins Park area and moved very peacefully through Capitol Hill. The entire protest, especially from above, has been very peaceful. They were escorted the entire way by Seattle police on motorcycles, and it seemed to grow just a little bit as the protest headed towards downtown. And now you're getting a picture of them at the Federal Building, which was their final destination. And we here in Chopper 7 counted maybe as many as 18, at least a dozen Seattle police officers sort of protecting the outside of that Federal Building. We have people sitting on the steps, but so far, no problems whatsoever. We even saw somebody going behind the protesters picking up trash. They were part of that immigration rally, so things have been very well controlled. And so far, Seattle police have done a great job of being able to block off the intersections before the protesters got there. But we're going to stay above the scene and, of course, keep you updated if there are any changes. But for now, reporting live from Chopper 7, Joanna Small, Cairo 7 News.
All right, thanks, Joanna. Now, overnight, vandals targeted some Capitol Hill businesses, which were boarded up in anticipation of today's protests. We spotted this new graffiti at 4:30 this morning at the Starbucks Reserve and Roastery Room on Capitol Hill. The vandals didn't leave a message, just their tags. The roastery is on Pike Street. Now, Cairo 7's Rob Munoz is live there now. Rob, certainly last year we saw damage up there from anarchists. What is the latest there now?
Well, Lindsay, I actually saw graffiti happening in front of my eyes when people were walking down, likely heading to that protest at Westlake Rally starting at 6 o'clock. They had black bandanas on their faces. Now, where we're standing, though, we have a vantage point over I-5 of where we can see possibly if these rallies do head up to Capitol Hill through these overpasses. We want to show you video from Capitol Hill from previous years in May Day. They have seen a lot of violence. Last year, the protesters were corralled from downtown, pushed up to Capitol Hill by Seattle police, and that is where we saw dumpsters being lit on fire. We also saw some other incidents, news vans being there attacked. Protesters told us, however, they want to stay downtown. They do not want to be corralled and pushed up to Capitol Hill this year. Now, back out here live, we are also keeping an eye on I-5. Of course, the 99 has been shut down as part of that 2-week closure. We will also be watching out, as police have been, to see if protesters hop on the I-5 this year, as they know this is the only north-south route. We're going to be keeping an eye on the Capitol Hill all night. We're live here over Pine and I-5. I'm Rob Munoz, Cairo 7 News.
As we mentioned, this is a day in Seattle with a variety of protests, so far peaceful. Thousands of peaceful demonstrators are downtown tonight for the annual May Day protest. That includes hundreds of activists holding their second immigrants' rights rally outside the federal courthouse in downtown Seattle.
Now, this after they marched the more than 2 miles from Judkins Park. Cairo 7's Deborah Horn is live in downtown Seattle. And Deborah, a lot of groups are represented at this rally.
And in the march, too, Lindsay. In fact, they arrived here in downtown Seattle at 7th and Stewart just before we went on the air at 5 o'clock. They just announced it's time to dance. And we understand that after a long, hot march from Judkins Park. Hundreds of activists stepped off at about 3 o'clock this afternoon on their way to downtown Seattle. They were led by Native Americans who blessed the route along the way. There were as many causes here as there were people, it seemed. We talked to some of them as we marched.
Why this right now? Because we are really in support of workers and immigrant rights, and always have been, yeah. And so May is a very important event for us, and we've always been here.
I'm really hoping that this is just the beginning of building the momentum and the political space that we need to have so we can have a strong impact in the elections.
Now, the marchers did indeed continue until they made their way to the Federal Building. There were speeches to begin the day and more speeches, of course, to end it. As I said, they're over there dancing right now, but we know they're going to be listening to a few more speeches. We're going to head over and listen for a moment with them, and we'll have that for you tonight at 6:30. For now, reporting live in downtown Seattle, Deborah Horn, Cairo 7 News.
And we know that that group that Debbie's covering is separate from the anarchist group protesting in Westlake Park.
That's where we find Cairo 7's Henry Rossoff. And Henry, just a few minutes ago, you said officers in body armor had surrounded some of those protesters there.
And right now the protesters are kind of just standing here. We're seeing an increasing number of anti-capitalist, so-called anarchist protesters sort of form up in the Westlake area. And then as we pan a little bit left, you can see some of those officers on bikes in full body armor. They kind of position themselves between the Fifth and Pine shopping stores and the anarchists right now, perhaps anticipating some sort of trouble there. But the anarchists so far seem content to just kind of form up their numbers. As we mentioned, we are seeing a lot of heavy police presence down here at Westlake. We have been seeing that throughout the day. We've also been seeing many of the so-called usual suspects that begin to make their way out of the woodwork each and every year. Some dressed in all black, some have the Guy Fawkes masks, but the music that was played a little bit earlier from about 2:30 to 4:30, that actually gave some of the downtown shoppers we spoke with a little bit of a hope that things would stay peaceful, because that was a relatively peaceful event.
I mean, hopefully it is peaceful and no window smashing and stuff like that. And I mean, it's right to protest, but I just hope everybody is calm and, you know, and keeps it civil.
But even at that concert, I want to show you this video we shot. We were just trying to get some pictures of the crowd enjoying the concert, and this sort of standoffish moment we had as we just tried to get some simple video kind of gives you some insight into the mindset of some of the protesters, so-called anti-capitalist anarchists that are out here. Looking back live now, you can see some of them kind of forming up again, just talking, just hanging out, so nothing happening just yet. The word is that the marching may begin at around 6 o'clock, but covering this for the last few years, I can tell you that is at best a guess, and the police are ready for it to start at any moment, early or late. Live at Westlake, Henry Rossoff, Cairo 7 News.
All right, thanks, Henry. And our team coverage continues now with Cairo 7's Gary Horker. He is also live downtown there.
Gary, it appears some of the anarchists calling themselves the Black Bloc have arrived early there, but there's no telling really where they're going to march tonight.
Right, they don't have a plan or a published route, of course, because that is the essence of anarchy, right? That's why anything can happen here. It's very hard to predict. I'm going to give you a little different angle of what Henry Rossoff just gave you at 5 o'clock. The protesters we've seen every year represent anarchy, so to tip their hands on what the protest will contain will not happen. On the Northwest Anarchist website, we saw a quote that really caught my eye. It's called May Day. Here's a quote. It says, "It continues a tradition of riotous play that continues to bring a livid revolt against capitalism and the state to the streets of Seattle." Of course, police, as you can see there, are planning for any kind of tactical situation, and they say there will be a lot more of them, 30% this year. We will bring you live coverage of the May Day March and keep it posted as it happens, live here and online. For now, reporting live in Westlake Park, I'm Gary Horker, Cairo 7 News.
All right, Gary, and now we know that the anarchists began their protests on Capitol Hill last year.
Cairo 7's Rob Munoz is there now, and businesses there aren't out of the clear yet, Rob, and they're not taking any chances.
Yeah, Dave, you know, one of the de facto tourist spots that's become one here is a Starbucks roastery. But as you can see, people coming up here to check it out, and then they find out this. They are closed today. Everything here, the glass has been boarded up. The employees boarding this up last night told us that it's a lot cheaper to do this instead of replacing all of the glass. In fact, this is not the only business. If you follow me over here, this is Pike heading down to downtown. This is another shop that's boarded up their windows. They told me last night they had 5 sheets of plywood. Now, we don't know if those protesters will be heading up here to Capitol Hill like they did last year when Seattle police pushed them up here. They told us that is not their objective this year, but we will be watching as we have a clear line of view all the way down to the Westlake Park area, and we'll be watching Capitol Hill all night long. We're live here on Pine and Capitol Hill. I'm Rob Munoz, Cairo 7 News.
All right, Rob.
Now, another live look tonight at the May Day protests and marches from Chopper 7. Now, we want to take a look back at last year. We know that 16 people were arrested then. 3 officers got minor injuries. As you can see from Chopper 7 right now, everything very calm, very peaceful. But we have seen people, self-identified anarchists dressed in black, identifying themselves as anarchists, standing around Westlake Park and being surrounded by police officers right now. Now, in the past, police have used pepper spray, flashbangs to deal with some of those protesters. As those protests have gotten violent, usually later in the night, we saw them dealing with broken glass and spray-painted anarchy symbols. That was the damage that we saw last year, as well as 3 officers getting minor injuries.
We should mention here that these protesters do not have a permit. The protesters earlier today did, but these self-described anarchists do not. But they're going to be allowed to protest as long as things don't become violent out there, as long as they don't hurt people or destroy property. Police presence has been beefed up dramatically this year, so we'll see how this goes tonight. We'll certainly keep you posted throughout the evening here.
Absolutely. And again, peaceful right now, gathering right now. We saw immigrants' rights marches earlier, completely peaceful, and just watching this. And while you watch the CBS Evening News next, you can keep watching our live stream of the protests on KIRO7.com. Our coverage continues throughout the night and back here at 6:30.
Yeah, from all of us here at KIRO 7, have a good evening. Hope to see you a little bit later.